and features. Strength skill gem, general cry, performs for war cry, taunting nearby enemies to attack the user, and summoning mirage warriors from nearby corpses. Now what's very important about mirage warriors is that they are not considered minions, so let's just have that sorted. I'm not going to control F anyway, anything. I don't want any spoilers. Let's move on. So that means that they're going to be similar to the Savior Sword from Awakener, which makes them mirages and mirage warriors and not minions. So it's going to be interesting to see. And it seems, based on the video we saw earlier today, that it seems like at least level 20 gem would be capped at 5 minions, or 5 mirage warriors rather. And they use the linked attack skill once before dissipating, which I'm assuming would either be able to scale the amount of mirage warriors or the amount of attacks they do through lab enchants, but we're not sure yet, so we'll see. Strength skill gem, intimidating cry, performs a war cry, intimidating nearby enemies and taunting them to attack the user, as well as exerting the user's next 2 attacks, grants a buff which reduces the effect of enemy armor against your hits. I think this is completely stupid, because enemy armor is only mitigating a super tiny amount of your actual damage output. Armor is so useless on enemies, even though they buffed it, and that was barely noticeable. Seismic Cry performs a war cry, taunting nearby enemies to attack the user and exerting the user's next 4 slam attacks. Grants a buff which makes it easier for you to stun enemies, but any boss will now have immunity after being stunned once. Ancestor Cry performs a war cry, taunting all nearby enemies to attack the user and exerting the user's next 8 strike attacks. Grants a buff which gives you bonus armor and melee range. Now the melee range here is the big part. I think this could actually be pretty cool. Strength support gem, urgent orders, support warcry skills, make them faster to use by lengthening their cooldowns. And then we have Penance Brand. It creates a magical brand which can be attached to nearby enemy. It periodically activates while attached, adding energy to the branded enemy. Each activation, energy spreads from each energized enemy to an enemy within range which is not energized by the brand. If the branded enemy has 20 energy, each activation will instead deal a pulse of area damage. Energy explodes when the energized enemy dies or the brand is removed, dealing damage in an area. I think this can be pretty cool, but it feels like a pseudo self-cast rather than how the identity of brands works up until now, I guess. And then we have the Wintertide brand, creates a magical brand which can attach to a nearby enemy, dealing cold damage over time and chilling them. It periodically activates while attached, gaining stages that raises the damage when removed. And a short duration debuff, dealing damage over time, and chill is applied to each nearby enemy. The problem with this one is similar to ED Contagion, I guess, where ED hits one, potentially a few enemies in a very small splash radius, and then the Contagion spreads it out once that enemy's dead. This is basically the cold version of that, because you have to kill that enemy that has this shit on them before that spreads. But unlike Contagion, which delivers this damage mechanism further through a large radius, it seemed based on the video like this AoE needs to be scaled to be decent, and it's locked in place wherever this enemy died. I'm not sure Wintertide will be that good to use, but we'll see. And then we have what I think is the coolest brand that they're introducing, which is the Arcanist brand. Creates a magical brand which can attach to a nearby enemy. It periodically activates while attached, triggering linked spells. The brand will detach if the enemy dies. I think this is really cool because not only can you use this with actual spells to do damage with, you can use this as a utility tool, and I've been rooting a lot for the possibility of using Arcanist brand to generate corpses and potentially using it for Detonate Dead or Volta Dead for clearing. So we're going to see the rest of the patch notes to see where that lands. And then we have the Swift brand support. The support brand skills causing them to activate more frequently, but reducing their duration. Added a new strength skill gem, the Earth Shatter, slam the ground, sending out shockwaves that damage enemies and end in spikes. These spikes can be detonated by any slam attack or warcry. Works with maces, scepters, active staves, and unarmed. And then the Fist of War support the slam attacks, ancestrally empowering the support attacks with improved damage and area. Reworked 3 Warcry skill gems, Enduring Cry, Abyssal Cry, now called Infernal Cry, and Rallying Cry. 14 new unique items, one of which were designed by a supporter. Rebalance more than 50 existing unique items, not including accommodation made by base type changes. Added 12 new divination cards designed by our supporters. Right. It's going to be pretty fun to see where this goes. Minor new content and features. Alongside improvements made to Pathfix's engine, we've changed the post-processing setting so that 2 specific ones are separately exposed, reducing the intensity of the new bloom effect. A new bloom effect and disabling blur effects, such as those played with when transitioning into or out of an incursion. Okay. Also improved new house screen shake effects, such as those played on critical hit or handle, toning down the wild variances and ensuring you can always still see the action. This new screen shake can be disabled in options if desired. If I do a DD build Necromancer with 200% increased cast speed plus a flesh offering, spamming out corpses and exploding them immediately with an insane speed, I will play with screen shake because that would be fun. Added 2 new Rogue Exiles assigned with the help of our talent competition winners. Add a new Labyrinth enchantments for both new and reworked skills, like I mentioned with the General's Cry. Improve the visual effects of the number of players, the monster skills including Earthquake, Firestorm, Ground Slam, Ice Crash, Creeping Frost, previously Arctic Breath, Perforate, all Warcry skills, Thunder, Multi-Strike, Tectonic Slam, Incinerate, Arc as well, Herald of Ash, Arcane Cloak, Armageddon Brand, Orb Storms, and Lightning Warp. That would be nice to see, actually. Updated the frames on passive skill hovers to the ones created for Path of Exile 2. Haunted enemies now have a more visible effect played on them. Improve the behavior of pets playing their animation while deployed as a hideout decoration. Okay. Updated the visual surge effect played when casting an elemental spell. Spells with Stygian effect applied now produce a Stygian surge around the player's character when cast. Weapon skins for supporter packs can now apply to both weapons when dual wielding. Added more music to the list of hideout options. Added some missing dialogue and sounds missions. Improve the dragon's fireball visuals. And reduce the flashing when they explode to make them easier on the eyes. And an option to prevent other players from using your map device portal in your hideout. Oh, didn't even know that was a thing. Carpets and solar sample tiles are now aligned with the doors. Oh, thank God. Literally unplayable. Improved how audio is handled for performance. Oh, shit, boys. Oh, about time. Continue to incrementally improve the sound, art, effects, and environments. Delirium mechanics added to the core game. Delirium has been added to the core game from the Torch Courts onwards. Okay, it looks approximately how you'll have I can't even speak. Let's do that again. You will have approximately a 5% chance to encounter a mirror of Delirium in each area. Once you reach the Atlas, the chance will increase by a small amount for each other league, Atlas, or master mechanics that appear in that area. In other words, if your goal is to encounter mirrors of Delirium, then you are encouraged to use your Sana modifiers, masturbation sections, and whatever else you have available to you. You'll have a greater chance of finding cluster jewels through Delirium encounters, proportional to the number of rewards you earn during that encounter. Okay. Character balance, the Shakari God of Power no longer gives you immune to poison, which I think is a bit sad, but I understand why, because it now causes poison on you to have 50% less duration and prevents you from being poisoned while there are at least 5 poisons on you. And the reason for that is, as they described, is because of the Alhes Midgardian, for example, the poison wasn't really a difficulty or a danger for non-CI builds. Hexproof now acts like an immunity effect when gained, such as via Headhunter, and will remove any curses already present on you when gained, which is a direct nerf to Headhunter builds. But it will still work very fine till you get a Hexproof mod on you, and then it will be because you lose the self-curse temporal chains. Headhunter will still be really insane, but not as stupid as it already has been. Dual wielding no longer grants 20% more physical attack damage. It still grants 10% more attack speed and 50% chance to block attack hits. Skill reworks. Greater support for Warcry has been added to the passive skill tree in the form of new and changed clusters and even new keystone. Warcry no longer shares a cooldown by default. All Warcries now have a base use of 0.8 seconds, and their effects tend to linger for a greater duration. The base cooldowns now are also longer. Each Warcry is enhanced by the proximity of enemies, and for some Warcries, allies are on corpses too. The funny thing about this is, like I mentioned before, because it is measured as power, with normal enemies providing 1 power per enemy, and magic enemies are providing 2 power per enemy, rares 10, uniques 20, and players providing 5 in PvP encounters. All Warcries also taunts enemies in range. The funny thing about this is that you can stack cluster jewels to allow you to have between 50 up to, I think it was 90 enemies or 90 power as a baseline of your Warcries, plus whatever enemies are near you. So it is possible to get Warcries a pretty stupid amount of power. Warcries now also cost a certain, assuming we don't know if they are going to change anything on the cluster jewel for that specifically. We'll see that later, I'm assuming. Warcries all now cause a certain number of attacks to become exerted after the Warcry is used, except Enduring and General's Cry. However, the attacks done by the General's Cry Mirage Warriors are exerted. Exerted attacks are enhanced in different ways depending on the Warcry. Exerted attacks can benefit from the effects of multiple Warcries if the type of attack is valid. Alright. Abyssal Cry, now Infernal Cry, now taunt all nearby enemies to attack the user and exert the next 4 melee attacks. Also covers enemies in Ash, which is one of the very few ways to reliably do so, slowing them and making them more vulnerable to fire damage, causing enemies to explode when they die, dealing fire damage in an area. Exerted attacks trigger Combust, which converts 60% of fist damage to fire and deals 100% attack damage in an area at level 1 and 158 at level 20. That's actually pretty big. Now has the base duration of 5 seconds at gem level 1, 5.9 and 20. Explosions for slain enemies deal fire damage equal to 8% of the monster's max life. Enemies covered in Ash take 3% increased fire damage per 5 power, up to 20%. Now gains 1% increased area effect for Infernal Cry, not Combust, per 1% gem quality, and now has a new gem icon. Okay. Rallying Cry now taunts all nearby enemies to attack the user and exert the next 5 melee attacks, gives nearby allies a buff based on the damage of the user's weapon, which could be potentially used for things like Dawn Blow builds, Hell of Purity builds, or minion builds in general. But for the most part, minion builds don't really care about getting a weapon that actually gives you a lot of damage. They'd rather have plus level of minion skills, plus level of all spell skills. But for the sake of DB and Herald Purity, this could potentially be something good to use. Do enemy weapons count as allies? They are counted as your allies, yes. Not party members, but they are counted as allies, correct. So nearby allies is also party members, but party members are specifically not your minions, but only party members, whereas minions are considered allies as well. Base duration of 5, up and down to 20. Buff grants add attack damage equal to 3% of the damage of your main hand weapon per 5 power, up to a maximum of 20%. So I don't think it's going to be that good to use for minion builds with this in mind then. Counts both allies and enemies in range of power. This buff has 100% more effect on your minions. Okay, I'll take that back. For DV builds and Herald Purity, that could actually be potentially nice to use. Not super big since the cooldown's there, but definitely nice to use. Exert attacks deal 5% more damage per affected ally up to 25%, and increase air effect per 1% gem quality. Okay, interesting. Enduring Cry now taunts all nearby enemies to attack the user and grants endurance charges. Gives a brief burst of life regen, which nobody gives a fuck about, as well as a buff which grants resistance and physical damage mitigation based on your endurance charge. We don't really need physical damage reduction based on your endurance charges. But the resistances is probably the stupidest thing I've ever seen here, unless it gives you plus max resistance, which I doubt. Base duration of 2 seconds. 1 endurance charge per 5 power with a minimum of 1 charge. Buff grants 2% to all resistance. And 2% additional physical damage reduction per endurance charge. So completely useless. And you can regenerate 120 life. 1900 at level 20. Over 1 second. I'm still saying this is shit for healing. There's a much higher numbers than I thought they would have, but it's no. I'm not a big fan of that. I think this is stupid. Sunder now looks amazing and slams the ground, creating a slow wave of churning terrain that damage enemies in a sequence of areas in front of you. Enemies hit by the wave will release a damaging shockwave in an area around them. Using the skill again will stop the previous wave. Requires Mace, Scepter, Axe Staff, or Unarmed. The wave creates 5 areas. The wave creates 5 areas and cannot stop before creating 2 areas. There is a delay between the areas the wave creates. The gem gains reduced delay between areas as it levels, up to 25% reduced delay between areas at gem level 20. The wave can cause a shockwave from up to 5 enemies, and the wave gains +2 radius in area in sequence. You know what? We can actually play some music. I forgot about that because we're using DMCA for music. Let's make sure it is YouTube friendly. Where is that? Do instrumental for this, and then we play rock music as we do this. Shockwave now deals 40% less damage from 60. Against more area of effect as the gem levels 19% at level 20. I think Sunder looks amazing. The problem I have with Sunder is that it seems so slow. It sounds so fucking slow. Slow is not good, but I understand, like, they seem to be promoting this slow play style with two-handed weapons, but even, it doesn't matter how much damage you do, it would still be better to be faster. It's damage, you can get that on the faster builds. It's harder to get the speed up on these inherently slow designed approaches. We'll see how it goes. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm very wrong. Tectonic Slam no longer has a chance to consume endurance charges per attack to create charge slam. Now consumes an endurance charge every third time you create a fissure, and gains 5% more area of effect and 5% branching fissures chance per endurance charge. The spread of fissures have been partially normalized, ensuring both sides of the main fissure will get at least one branching fissure. Now deals base damage and has an added damage effect of 180 up from 170 up to 220, general 20 from 200. Okay. Is it hard to hear me with the music? Lower the sound of the music a little bit though. I'm trying to keep the voice down. Hannah is sleeping. Moving over to skill balance. Skills whose cost are reduced to 0 are now shown to have mana cost of 0 to differentiate them from skills which do not have a mana cost, such as fall skills. Brands had their detached duration reduced, and these durations are no longer refreshed by brand recall. New brand playstyles are now supported through new passive skill tree clusters, keystones, and support gems, as well as a suite of new brand skills. When an enemy dies while a brand is attached, the brand will return to its original position wherever it appeared when it was first cast, or a recalled position, which I think is absolutely stupid. I don't understand this. I get that they're trying to get rid of some of the passive approaches to it, but the brand recall would have been enough in my opinion. Slams and other existing skills are now tagged as slam skills, which determines whether or not they're affected by supports passives and modifies the slam skills. The existing skills which are now considered slam skills are ground slam, ball, ground slam, leaf slam, ice crash, earthquake, wall, earthquake, thunder, ancestral warchief, tectonic slam, perforate, Oriana's touch, and consecrated path. Made improvements for totem AI for skills that have some sort of prerequisite for use, such as blades for blade blast or corpses for detonate dead. Specific skills, and notice my voice is cracking a bit. I'm gonna drink. Now it has a mana cost of 0 rather than no mana cost. Okay. Arctic Breath, which is now named Creeping Frost. There was an error which caused Arctic Breath to not correctly inherit damage penalties from gems like GMP level 1 after gem level 1. We have fixed this and have compensated the damage accordingly. Now deals 11 to 16 at level 1 unchanged, and deals up to 572 damage at level 20, which is up from 450. Now deals 16.7 base cold damage per second at level 1 unchanged, up to 1391 at 20, which is just a teeny tiny buff from level 20. Okay. Alright, but Hidden Brand now activates every 0.75 seconds while attached from 0.8. Deals up to 51 damage at level 1, which is up from 43. That's kind of a big deal for level 1 actually. And at level 20 it's 597, up from 498. So my Hidden Brand is actually getting some love there. Quite significant actually, and has a 10% higher added damage effectiveness. Oh. Now deals 120% more damage with Ignites at level 1 unchanged, and 250 at level 20, up from 180. Oh Jesus. Detached duration of 6 seconds from 10. Now has a base area effect raised 22 units from 18. Armageddon Brand getting some love here. That's interesting. Okay, so before reading this, in the manifesto they said Ball Lightning would get buffed, which is completely mind-blowing. It is so fucking retarded if they're buffing it. Because Ball Lightning Miners is, in my opinion, before reading this, probably going to be an insane league starter. Level 1, 57 top damage from 48, so okay. 533 lightning damage at level 20 from 400. Added damage effectiveness for 50 from 40. Okay, I can tell you this right now. I don't even need to read the rest of the patch notes. Ball lightning miners, you're going to see a majority of the people playing ball lightning miners on the first week of the league. In Pee Wee Ninja, you're going to see a fuckload of saboteurs again, and they're going to play ball lightning miners. It will be an insane leveling approach. It will be insane to kill bosses. It will be insane to kill anything. Ball lightning miners is going to be a fucking meta powerhouse. This is retarded. Why? There is no reason for this. You can go in with a tablet and a tremor rod and kill tier 16 guardians in shit gear, and now they're just buffing it. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. I don't understand why, though. So stupid. Ball lightning miner will be crazy good. I have a guide for it. You can check it out on my YouTube channel. This is so stupid. Bear trap now has an added damage effectiveness of 260 from 200. Wait, what? Okay, that's pretty big as well. Body swap improved the targeting and behavior of triggered body swap when nothing was targeted. It now prioritizes corpses if there are any near your targeted location. Some of these changes they do in patches are so weird sometimes. Like this. Why? Was there not enough people playing Ball Lightning for the first week in Delirium that they felt that, oh, we have to buff Ball Lightning, no one's playing it? Brand Recall no longer refreshes the duration of recall brands, now spends 20% of each recall brand's mana cost to activate them when they're recalled. That's interesting. There's a cooldown of 4 seconds from 3. Now gains 40% increased cooldown recovery speed at gem level 6 from 50%. So why would we even bother using Brand Recall? We'll just cast a new brand. Cyclone no longer makes you immune to stun while channeling. Dual Strike now deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 125% at level 1 unchanged and 190 at 20, which is 20% higher than before. Earthquake Aftershocks no longer have added attack physical damage. Aftershocks now deal 150% more damage with hits and ailments, can now be used while unarmed. The base radius of initial hit is 14 radius from 18. Okay. So I'm gonna keep my voice a little bit lower, and I'm still sleeping. Fireball now has an added damage effectiveness of 240 from 180. No longer gains additional explosion radius as the gem levels up, and now gains additional explosion radius based on the distance the projectile has traveled as the gem levels up to +9 at gem level 20. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's based on the distance the projectiles travel instead. Actually, it's self-scaling with the levels, so then the added damage effectiveness is up by 60%. And they get projectile speed per 1% quality and 0.5 ignition and 1% quality. That's a better change, but still, that's interesting though. Well, this is supposed to be a melee league again, and that's not gonna happen. Firestorm has had their lower damage increase from level 1, and added damage effectiveness is up by 15%. Bracing Pulse had an added damage effectiveness up by 50%. Okay. Frostbolt now has an added damage effectiveness of 220. Frostbolt is actually quite often used, but mostly in Cosprey's Malice in the endgame, but people scale the Nova, not so much the Frostbolt. The Frostbolt is more like a means to an end to deliver the Frost Nova. But Frostbolt, there was this build, the Frostbolt Totem build. Absolutely insanely good. Low budget, very, very effective, and that's a huge buffer. Ground Slam no longer has added attack damage. Now deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 115 up for 95 and 150, which is 25% higher than level 20. No longer tagged as a physical gem. Why would Ground Slam not have a physical tag? Just because they removed this, so like, oh, it's no longer a physical gem. I mean, okay. Parallel Purity no longer grants added physical damage to spells and attacks. Now it grants 9% more physical damage at level 1 and 12% more at physical. 12% more physical damage percent at gem level 20. Yeah, it's tagged as a slam instead. Yeah, they mentioned that as well, but I mean, it's still a physical gem though. It feels weird. Herald of Thunder no longer has a 0.4 second cooldown of the storm, repeatedly striking the same enemy. Now favors striking enemies that has been struck fewer times. Okay. Now it deals 1 to 31 at level 1, which is a slight nerf from the 1 to 34, and it deals up to 1108 damage at 20, which is lower than the previous 1303. And it's lowered added damage effectiveness. Is this a way to counteract the new uniques that is utilizing Herald of Thunder? To try to keep that somewhat balanced? Ice Crash no longer has added cold damage, converts 100% of Fizz to cold instead of 50. Deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 230 up from 190 and 280 instead of 240 to counteract this. Second stage deals 15% less damage from 10. Third stage now does 30% less damage from 20. I don't know how I feel about this. It feels weird. Ice Trap has gotten 50% increased damage effectiveness. Infernal Blow has gone 10% higher conversion. Lightning Trap has an added damage effectiveness up by 35%. Lightning Spire Trap has an added damage effectiveness lowered by 10%. I guess I can get behind that. Magma Orb now has an added damage effectiveness up by 45%. It also changed +2 times at level 1 from +1 up to +3 at level 20 from +2. So basically +1 more chain. And the new Threshold Jewels we saw, which looked pretty cool as well. 9 to 12 fire damage at level 1 Unchained. 1284 damage at the top, level 20, which is a buff from the 1073. Maybe we'll have to do a Magma Orb build. Gains base radius as the gem levels up to +4 radius level 20, previously did not gain radius. Maybe we'll do a Magma Orb build. This seems interesting. Magma Orb Miner. That could work. Multi-Strike now deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 110, down from 120, 148, up from 139. I like the way Multi-Strike Threshold Jewel works now. Overstorms now has an added damage effectiveness down by 5%. An error which caused Overstorm Strike's frequency to benefit doubly from increased cast speed was fixed, which has affect the balance of the skill, particularly for high cast speed builds. Is your Ball Lightning Guide souls up on League Start friendly? Absolutely. Super solid. Perforate now deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 125, down from 140, and 170, down from 196. 2 to 3 added attack physical damage at level 1, 130 top at level 20, previously had no added damage. 7 spikes instead of 6, 2 additional spikes if you changed stance recently, 75% less damage whilst in blood stance from 65. Now gains more area effect while in stance as the gem levels, up to 76% more at gem level 20. Perforate actually sounds pretty cool. Purifying Flame now has an added damage effectiveness of 180 from 140. Okay, guys. This league is supposed to be a slam melee league, right? Ball Lightning will be insane. We already know the Pyro class is still insane. Purifying Flame Miners has been a thing for quite some time now, and has in some cases been arguably better than Ball Lightning and Pyro class. Some people prefer to do Purifying Flame because of the cascading effect after they explode, that the Consecrated Ground still does damage across the field, and now they're giving 4% more added damage effectiveness. Absolutely stupid. It's going to be another Saboteur Minor League. How do they not see this? Do they not play the game? Stormbrand now has a base critical strike chance of 6% for 5.5. Added damage effectiveness of 30 down from 40. Activates every 0.5 up from 0.6. Has a detached duration of 6 from 10. Summon Holder Relic has a base critical strike chance of 5% though his no skill previously erroneously had 0%. Oh. Okay. Static Strike. Also lands are good with Harvest Mechanic because you drop lands, pop plant to kill them all with the detonate. Similar to how we killed bosses that are facing into the fight. Similar to how we killed Metamorph encounters instantly. Stormbrand got buffed 0.5% higher, base crit is pretty big, better activation rate, and slightly lower the damage effectiveness. I'd say that's pretty good though. But then again, you have the crit multi-nerf show. Static Strike now deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 110, up from 107, up to 150, which is lower at 20. Okay. Now it's a base duration of 2 from 4. Now converts 50 instead of 60. No longer crosses beams to deal 60% less damage while stationary, 4% less damage while moving. Beams now deal 4% less damage at all gym levels. Okay. No longer creates a stacking buff and no longer gains 10% increased beam frequency per buff stack. Beams now hit enemy every 0.4 seconds at gem level 1, down to 0.32 seconds at gem level 20 from 0.4 at all gem levels. Now that's very interesting actually. Very interesting. Wake Up Conviction now has an added damage effect. Here's a funny build. There is a Mjolnir cast while channeling build. You use Cyclone and you cast while channeling Purifying Flame, and you put the Wave of Conviction, because it's a lightning and fire spell, inside your Mjolnir, and that deals a shitload of damage. Purifying Flame and Wave of Conviction has both received an insane increase to damage effectiveness. Vol skill balance. Vol Earthquake base attack is now 75 from 100. Now has an added damage effectiveness of 60, up from 50, 71 at 20, but up from 61, so 10% higher. Vol Fireball has added damage increased by 6 million %, also known as 60%. More than that actually, 70? No, 60, sorry. Math. No longer gains additional explosion radius, is similar to the Fireball changes we talked about before. Ground Slam, same thing there. The added damage effectiveness is up by 5% at level 1 and 63% at level 20. Base attack speed is down 90% to match Ground Slam from 100%. Okay. Vol Lightning Trap got the damage similar to Lightning Trap, 35% increase. VMS, we talked about this before the game. 25 additional armor at level 1 from 60 at 429 at 20 instead of 1000. 20% more armor at level 1, 29% more armor at level 20. So finally, armor-based builds will actually have use of it, and non-armor builds can't abuse it. 40% of damage taken from hits to be taken from the buff before your life ranger shield at level 1 up to 35% level 20 from 80% at all levels. Okay, so it can't really be abused that much anymore. The buff can now take damage equal to 30% of your armor from 60 up to a maximum of 30,000. Okay. I like this change, it seems pretty solid so far. Now reflects 300% of damage taken from buff as fire damage each second, or when the buff expires or is depleted at the gem level 1 from 100% up to 9,000% at gem level 20 from 3,000. Okay. Now removes and is removed by any other guard skill, and not just the normal Molten Shell. Support chip. No minion nerfs? What? Wait. No minion nerfs so far? No minor nerfs? So far, just straight up buffs to minors. What the actual fuck, dude? Support gem balance. Support skills now gain added lightning damage equal to 70% of mana cost of gem level 1 and change. 108 level 20, which is lowered by about 19% in the Archmage. Now gains additional uses on the Shockwave as gem levels up to 4 at level 20. 160 unchanged level 1, 260% base damage at level 20, which is up by 50%. Slower projectile skills, now at 20% less projectile speed at level 1 from 30, and up to 30% less at level 20 from 49. So that's the straight up so-called nerf. With the slower projectile is slowing projectile slower. This doesn't change Purifying Flame Miners though. 20% less projectile at level 1 from 30, and 30% we lose 19% slower projectiles. That's I think that's fair, but the thing is, slower projectile is still insane. But the thing is, the slower your projectile moves, the better ball lightning is. So this change here is the only thing that would negatively impact ball lightning. However, packs you're killing, you don't barely need any damage to kill pack very fast. And it's bosses, and most bosses have pretty big hitboxes. This is not going to change anything for ball lightning miners, and even if you feel that this would be an impactful change, Purifying Flame just got an equal stupid buff as ball lightning and does the same thing. This is insane. Absolutely insane. Passive tree balance. We're taking the opportunity with this patch to review the passive skill tree as a whole with the new specific goals in mind. We want to add support for mechanics that have been added in the past few years that as of yet do not adequate support on the passive tree. Some of these mechanics include Rage, Unleash, Corpse Manipulation, Warcries, Heralds, and Banners. Jesus. Absolutely not with Morgan. Ball lightning will still be insane. Many passive skill clusters offer the same thing as other clusters, with the only difference being the location of the tree and the number of passive skills in the cluster. In this patch, we have endeavored to give each cluster its own identity and function. Timeless Dual Keystone passive have become a popular feature for many builds, but are prohibitively difficult to acquire, especially without trade. Remove some of the most build-defining keystones out of the Timeless Jewels and into the tree itself. These keystones have been added to the tree: Agnostic, Glassing Glow, Supreme Ego, Wind Dancer, and Eternal Youth. I think that's fair. Arcane's Prime and Deal should work pretty fine as well. Not as overkill as Miner though, in my opinion. We've also added new keystones as part of our effort to support newer mechanics. These keystones are the Impaler, Balance Guard, and Call to Arms. We also want to reduce the power of some clusters that were overly efficient and increase the power of clusters that were inefficient. Ultimately, the passive skill tree should provide more interesting choices regardless of your build. Due to the volume of the changes in the passive skill tree, we won't be listing each change out, but instead you can check out the new tree for yourself here. What else got later on? Ascendancy Balance. Corpse Pack now has an upper limit on increased cast speed per corpse consumed recently to 200%. So Arcanist brand generating corpses, another Arcanist brand to do DD or BD. You're gonna hit 200% pretty fast, and then they're just gonna be feeding itself and keeping you at 200% increased attack and cast speed. It's absolutely stupid. This is absolutely a nerf, but 200% is still crazy. Chieftain Tower Strength is moved and is no longer requested for Valakos Storm's Embrace, and it's been redesigned and now grants level 20 Tower's chosen skill, which is triggered when you use a slam attack, creating an image which mirrors your slam attack. The skill has a short cooldown. A new small passive leads to Tower of 4 Strength. It grants 10% area and 0.5 life regen per second. Valakos Storm's Embrace no longer grants 3% more damage for each endurance charge, lost recently up to 15. Instead, it now grants 15% more damage for 8 seconds when you lose or consume any endurance charges. Okay. A small passive leading to Valak restores some range, no longer grants 50% increased range and endurance charge duration. It now grants 5% chance to gain endurance charge on kill. So Chieftain Tectonic Slam can actually be really fucking cool. Berserker Warbringer has been redesigned. It now causes war cries to grant 5 rage per 5 power if you have less than 25 rage, and causes them to sacrifice 25 rage if you have at least 25 rage. Also causes exerted attacks to deal 50% more damage if a war cry or sacrifice rage recently. Now, I think a lot of people are complaining that, oh, you want to have rage, you want to have maximized rage, or you want to then use that for Berserk, right? But honestly, the fact that you can get 50% more damage for 4 seconds is pretty big. Small passive leading to Warbringer no longer has 20% increased warcry duration, it now has 20% increased walk speed. And then we have the Hierophant. Sign of Purpose has been redesigned, now causes brands to have 100% more activation frequency in the final 25% of their attached duration. It also causes brand recall to have 100% increased cooldown recovery speed. Okay. I have to do this now. Spectre. Any balance has been made to pass skill tree classes. This affect all existing cluster tools with the passive automatically the following notables have been affected. Blah blah blah. We don't get the information on what actually happened to it. See, this is not an issue. The precise commander is there as well, though. So there's been no direct changes to redemption sentries, nor any changes to specters, which means that you can still do millions upon millions of Shaper DPS. You don't need to stack Vicious Bite, you don't need to stack Precise Commander, you can do a build like that without cluster tools, you can still do millions upon millions of damage. So that kind of confirms the following things. BL miners, Purifying Flame miners, Pyroclast miners will be absolutely insane. Mjolnir with Conviction and Purifying Flame will be insane. Spectres will be absolutely insane. Okay. Enemy weapon, since you guys said it was not, they're not touching it. It's not as insane as the others, but it's definitely really good. Labyrinth Helmet enchants that granted reduced earthquake duration can no longer be obtained, so the existing versions are ineffective. Labyrinth Helmet enchants that granted charged slam chance for Tectonic Slam can no longer retain existing versions of this enchantment, now grant extra chance for branching fissures. Labyrinth Helmet enchant that granted 50 to 75 or 75% increased Rallying Cry buff effect now grants 10 to 50 increased Rallying Cry buff effect. Okay, it can no longer be obtained. This affects all existing enemies with this enchantment. Labyrinth Helmet enchant that granted 30 to 45% or 45% increased Rallying Cry duration now grants 10 to 50 increased Rallying Cry duration. It can no longer be obtained. This affects all existing items. Labyrinth Helmet enchantment that granted increased buff effect for Enduring Cry now grants increased cooldown reduction instead and can no longer be obtained. That changes normal existing items. Labyrinth Helmet enchantment that granted increased duration for Abyssal Cry now grants increased cooldown recovery speed for Infernal Cry instead and can no longer be obtained. This affects all existing items with this enchantment. Labyrinth Helmet enchantment that granted increased Abyssal Cry damage now instead grants increased Infernal Cry damage and can no longer be obtained. Essence of Hysteria and Boots will now drop burning ground every 10 units from 25. Oh. Add a new type of oil, Indigo oil, in the middle of the oil progression. 13 new ring and ointments that utilizes the new Indigo oil. Due to the removal of some notable passives, some existing anointed amulets may now have new notables on them. Okay. Amulets previously anointed with the battle cry now have Admonisher, those with words of glory now have natural authority. Add new Elder Slayer influence modifiers to several slots. Hunter influence ring modifiers that granted faster start of energy shield recharge is now instead found on Redeemer influence rings. Existing enemy with its modifiers are unaffected. Very interesting. Two-handed weapons. We've reviewed all two-handed weapon base types and have adjusted their attack damage, speed, and implicits with the goal of giving two-handed weapons build a different feel for their dual-wielded and one-handed counterparts, and to ensure that the damage you gain by using a two-hander made up for the lack of block and slower attack speed. All two-handed weapons have had their base damage increased by at least 15%, with axes in particular gaining even more. War Staves, as a might stats, base crit is now 7.3 from 7, implicit now grants 20% block chance from 18. Maelstrom has a base of 6.8 from 6.5, and implicit is 25 block instead of 20. Judgment is a base crit 6.5 instead of 6.3, with implicit is 20 spell block instead of 18 to block attacks. That's actually good though. This right there is actually good. Two-handed maces, Morningstar, implicit has an increased area effect of 15 from 4. Oh shit. Solomol has gotten the same thing. Ruimol has a base attacks per second is now 1 instead of 1.1. Implicit now grants 45% stun duration on 30. Colossus Mallet, base attacks per second is 1.3 from 1.2. Base crit chance is 5.5 from 5. Implicit now gains 30% increased area damage. Pile Driver has gotten a little bit faster attack speed. Implicit now grants 20% reduced enemy stun threshold. Meat Grinder has a 5% deal double damage implicit. Imperial Maul attacks base attack speed is now 1.1 from 1.2, but implicit gives you 10% increased strength. So that's the new strength stacking zombie weapon. Okay. Sure. The strength stacking zombie Mancers just got a buff. Quite significant as well. 10% increased strength is actually fucking big. That's big. Oh shit. Oh, well, good morning. That's actually big. Like straight up, that is huge. Minion Zombie Man's strength stacking now will be able to get a weapon that gives you 10% increased strength. That is insane. Actually insane. Terramol base attacks per second is 1.15 from 1.25. Base crit is 60 up from 5. Well, that's big. And implicit gets double stun duration. Coronal Maul base attack is 1.2 from 1.25. Implicit increase area effect from 20 up from 6. Yeah, but the nerf barely touched them, Killjoy. Don't have to worry about that. It's still really good, and now they just made it even better. Zombies are still functional. Everyone thinks that as soon as they include their name in a patch notes for a slight nerf, everyone loses their shit. Zombie Mancers are still fucking super strong. Two-handed axes, base attacks per second is now 1.05 from 1.15. Thundering Axe, base attacks 1.3 from 1.25, and implicits causes hits with this weapon have 20% increased damage over time multiplier from bleeding. Esomite has been made a little bit faster and have a 0.7% higher base crit. Ball Axe, base attacks is 1.15 from 1.2, and the implicit gives the attack this one a 25% chance of maim on hit. Despot Axe, base attack speed is increased by 0.1, Void Axe, base crit is up by 1%. I like how you look at everything in the summoner's perspective, like Tarky does with traps. It's not about that, it's about the fact that this works for strength stacking builds. And the only strength stacking build that would bother using a two-handed weapon that is not going for melee is a Zombie Mancer. Two-handed swords, implicit grants 30% increased global accuracy, grants 45 instead, and implicit that granted 45 now grants 60. Reaver Sword base attacks per second has been upgraded by 0.05 attacks. Implicit now grants 60% increased global accuracy. Esomite has had a similar attack speed increase. Crit chance up by 1.5% on the base. That's big. Implicit gives 25% global crit multi and Fall Great Sword. That gives attacks with this weapon 470 accuracy. Lion Sword has had their attack speed up as well. Implicit now grants 50 plus the strength and dexterity. 50 strength and dexterity. Infernal Sword implicit now gives attack with his weapon 30% increased elemental damage. Exquisite Blade base crit is 5.7 from 6%, but the implicit gives 50% increased greater strength multiplier down from 60. Cluster tool balance. Many balance changes have been made, so 2 passive skills granted by cluster tools disaffect all existing cluster tools with these passives automatically. Fully notables have been affected: Hexbreaker, Evil Eye, Forbidden Words, Remarkable, blah 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 blah. But most importantly, Vicious Bite is in this list right there, and Precise Commanders right there as well. And several new curse and aura-centric notables. I can already see the meta of Lee. Insane. Unique item balance. Due to the damage increase given to 200 weapon base types, we've adjusted the damage on a number of 200 unique weapons. Existing versions of all of these items will be updated to the below values if you use a Divine Orb. Counters Primacy, 100 to 140 increased Fist, from 160 to 220. Okay. Dancing Dervish has also received a nerf. Namu's Flame also dropped. Urki also dropped. Kitava's Feast also dropped significantly. Holy shit, that's a huge one in Kitava's Feast. Kingmaker, big one. Void Forge, massive nerf on the Void Forge. Doomsour, also nerf, not that big though. Contest Pride, huge nerf. Terminus Est, big nerf. Invictus Metal, significant nerf. At Serious Disfavor, went from the top end of 270 from 290, that's quite significant. Disintegrator, also pretty big. Hegemony's Era, which I still don't understand why they nerfed. Actually really big as well. It's actually even bigger than the Serious Disfavor nerf. Additionally, on Hedgie's Era, due to chances of the base type chance to critical strike, it now has a 10 to 20% increased critical strike chance from 20 to 30. They really fucked that up, dude. Wow. Other unique items. Can be granted by United in Dream that nobody's using anymore. All stock pricing and the other mod sufferings now grant 75% more added chaos damage to attacks and spells. Interesting. Timeless Jewels, new keystones have been added to replace the 5 that are now available in the passive skill tree. That's gonna be fun to see. The new ones are the Trader, Supreme Ostentation, Chainbreaker, Ascendance, Immortal Ambition. Existing Timeless Jewels will retain the old keystones, but if you re-roll them with Divine Orb, they'll be able to reveal these new keystones. Alt D no longer triggers a Visible Cry and hit, now causes enemies taunted by a Warcry to explode to death, dealing 8% of maximized chaos damage, 25% increased Warcry buff effect from 50, and now causes Warcry skills to have a cooldown of 4 seconds from 2. These changes affect all versions of the item except Warcry effect, which can be updated on values with Divine Orb. Arborix no longer causes you to gain Iron Reflex for 8 seconds after every 16. No longer causes you to deal 30% more damage with arrows hits at close range while you have Iron Reflex. Now Orc grants 30% increased attack and cast movement speed or far shot while you don't. No longer grants increased evasion rating or cast bow attacks to fire 2 additional arrows. Instead, it now grants Iron Reflex constantly, as well as level 30 Dash. If you cast Dash recently, it grants a fuckload of evasion rating and lots of movement speed. If you haven't cast Dash recently, it instead grants increased attack speed and causes bow attacks to fire 2 additional. Wait, what? And it also prevents you from using other traveling skills than Dash when this is equipped. That's actually insane. Arborix is actually insane. Usually Bulbos wants to be zoom fast by running. You don't normally want to use the mobility unless you need to get out of the area or something. Thank you, codes. Atlas of Rage no longer increase the mana cost of skills by 40%. You can now grant plus 40 mana cost of skills. Exclusive versions are unaffected. Barracks Respite, the radius at which it can be spread ailments to other enemies is now 25 from 12. Data Dream no longer supports Sock of the Gems with level 1 mana mage, now supports Sock of the Gems with level 1 Bone Chill. The Black King Phantasmal might grant for some effects now provides 50% more added physical damage to spells at all levels of the respective phantasm source. This effect affects existing versions of this item. If people will actually start using it for once. The Blood Dance now reduces attack and cast by 4% per frenzy charge from 3, increases damage with hits against enemies on low life by 20 to 30 per frenzy charge from 6. Now causes you to regenerate life per frenzy charge by 0.8 instead of 0.5. Existing items will be updated to these new values if you use Divine Orb, and also it also changes the way your frenzy charge looks. Pretty cool. Brain Rattler, we have seen this one. Brain Rot Flying no longer grants 2 power charges when you use a Warcry. Now grants Arcane Surge to you and allies when you use a Warcry. The Arcane Surge effect is increased based on the Warcry's power up to 50%. Existing versions are unaffected. We did see the Broken Faith as well. Circle of Fear, Nostalgia, Regret, and Anger skills. Ready to generate Herald modifiers. Reduce resistance. We read this as well in one of the posts. CD recovers, but keep in mind, holds door. Those kind of builds don't normally use a mobility skill. They are rather running because it's mostly faster. With that change, you'd be able to use a dash and get even more movement speed for 4 seconds before it kicks back to your Iron Reflex, and then have additional 2 more arrows, which means that the build would simply only use the mobility when it needs to go above edges and whatnot, or if you're really forced to dodge something immediately and your just movement speed is not covering for it. So that kind of build would not be using mobility skill. It would literally just sit with extra 2 arrows for free and run. Crown of the Tyrant now grants a lot of energy shield, life, kind of a significant buff. Cool. Darkness and Throne now increases the effective Sock of the Jewels by 75 from 50. The Dark Sphere now causes blind to not affect your chance to hit rather than preventing blind. This affects all versions of this item. Increased global damage is slightly buffed by 10% on low and high end, 10% global chance to blind enemies on hit from 70% while you are blinded. Enemies blinded by you have malediction. Existing version of this value. Stories, Malevolence. New version of this item will no longer grant plus 50 magical skills, instead of a grant 30 to 50% increased seal gain frequency. That's an interesting take. This a very interesting take. Oriana's Invitation now grants 0.6% physical fireball or lightning damage, leeches life depending on the version. Grants 0.2%. Creates chance of shock. 10%. So Dorian's Invitation's belt is still shit for material. Duskblight. No longer supports Sock of the Gems with level 15 added chaos damage. Now triggers level 15 Stalking Pustule. Kill. It grants 30 to 40 up to 50 to 60 chaos damage to spells and attacks during any flask effect. That's very interesting. What level is Duskblight for? Of 40. That's very interesting. Be fun to use. Enmity Divine no longer supports Sock of the skills with level 10 life leech. Now supports Sock of skills with level 1 chance to bleed, and has increased damage overtime multiplier for bleeding from crits. They do not change on the existing item. Harbinger Brutality buff now grants 50% reduced damage taken from 40, and now has a 20-second cooldown from 40. This affects all versions of this item. Sentia Sangris no longer causes you to leech energy shield instead of life. Instead, it now grants Ghost Reaver, causes energy shield leech effect from attacks to not be removed at full energy shield, and grants 50% reduced maximum energy shield recovery per energy shield leech. Changes do not affect keep in mind, it's also nerfed. No longer increases the mana cost of skills by 50%. Now it grants 34% increased spell damage. That causes notable passive arrays to be transformed to instead grant 10% increased mana cost of skills and 20% increased spell damage. That's very interesting. It's actually a really cool change. I didn't expect them to do something like that. It's also limited to 1, by the way. That's a really cool change, to be honest. I like this. Fragile Bloom no longer increases damage taken by 10% across each region percent life per second. Now grants 1 fragile regrowth each second up to 10, causes 0.7% life to region per second per fragile regrowth. All fragile regrowths are lost when you're hit. Existing versions of this item are not affected by these changes and also limited to 1. Joffrey's Devotion, the elemental warding skill, now has a cooldown of 1 second from 10. Only triggers on melee hit rather than any, makes you unaffected by curses rather than immune to curses for its duration. This affects all existing versions of this item due to base type changes. It now has a 47 to 71 added physical damage of a perfect roll, which is a slight nerf. Gloomfang no longer causes projectiles to gain percent non-chaos as extra chaos damage per chain. Now causes projectiles that have chain to gain 20 to 35% non-chaos damage extra chaos damage. After that change.
Welcome to the crew line.
Interesting. Vexar with a Prime sub. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Make sure you link your Twitch account to your Discord account, man. Thanks so much for the support, dude. Appreciate that. Now grants 30 to 4% increased projectile speed. So it only gives projectiles that has chained that extra damage. Thanks for the content. I always appreciate your build bits. My pleasure, dude. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you for coming in here and telling me. Appreciate that. His Mana's Bloodlust, new version of this item, now grants 40% increased attack speed if you're taking a savage hit. Reason. Due to the base type changes, now has a 100 to 125 fist damage, which is a pretty big nerf. Existing items can be updated. Hot-footed renamed Hot-headed. We did see this one. Yeah, we saw that one. We talked about it as well. Halen's Fury now grants 15 to 20% increased lightning damage per frenzy charge from 12. This thing can be updated in the draft. But the Gloomfang is retarded. Like, you don't need it. Gloomfang is completely useless now. Like, completely useless. Halen's Fury now grants 15 to 20% increased lightning damage per frenzy charge from 12. And then it was Hyperboreus, which is giving you focus to have 20 to 50% increased cooldown recovery speed from 50 to 20, which can be updated with a Divine Orb. The Inevitability no longer causes Magmortar to fire additional projectile. Instead, now it costs Magmortar to deal 50% less damage and 40% more damage per chain, which I think is absolutely insane. I like this. Kata's Thirst now has also limited to 1, by the way. Kata's Thirst has 50% chance to trigger a spell when you spend at least 100 mana to use a skill from 30%. Existing version can be updated to new values with Divine Orb. Hongming's Stratagem now grants 30 to 50% fire damage with hits and ailments against blinded enemies from 30. 50 to 300% increased energy shield, which is a huge buff from the 80 to 120 previously. Existing enemies can be updated to these new values with Divine Orb. The Fog of War skill that is triggered when a trap is triggered has also been improved with a larger radius and cooldown 1 second from 3. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's still a shit base though, so the energy shield is not going to be that significant. It looks better, it sounds more insane than it is. Do you think the Herald Period change will work the Sentinel Queen type build? Of course not, no. Redemption centers were able to be absolutely insane when without cluster tools. And they're just making the cluster tools balance. We're still going to have redemption centers being in one of the best specters in the entire game. Still, and it's still going to be insane. Limb Split and the Cauterizer, new version of this item, now also trigger Gore Shockwave on hit if you have at least 150 strength. Limb Split triggers a level 1 version, the Cauterizer triggers a level 5 version. Gore Shockwave, I like it. Malachi's Loop grants 12 to 16% increased spell damage per power charge up from 6. That's big. Malachi's Vision now regenerates 250 energy shield per second if all equipped items are corrupted from 100. If you find a way to reroll existing versions of this item, then something's gone terribly, terribly wrong. Okay. Malagar's Lens, the radius at which nearby allies are healed when you die has been increased to 35 units from 20. This affects all versions of the item. The amount of which allies are healed now to 1% of your maximum life from 2, which existing versions can be updated to with the minor and a temporary loss of your mental faculties. Mark of the Red Covenant, minions now at 25 to 45% movement speed from 10 to 15. Summon Radiant Spirits no longer refreshes their duration when you kill a united enemy and instead deal fire-only splash damage to surrounding targets. Not sure how I feel about that. Martial Artistry no longer increases area effect while unarmed. Instead now grants 3 to 4 melee strike range while unarmed. Also causes passive skills and radius to grant 1% increased attack speed with unarmed attacks. Has a small radius, existing enemies are unaffected. Might and Influence has been totally redesigned, now grants 10 to 15 increased attack damage rather than global physical damage, and 2 randomly selected weapon-specific benefits from a small pool. It still requires that you have at least 40 dexterity and radius and these mods are active. Existing enemies are unaffected. Moonbender's Wing, we saw this item, it's still terrible. I'm not even going to give it the respect of reading it. Mute to Independent now grants Call to Arms, one of the new keystones. Existing versions are unaffected. Now moves Flame, converts 60 instead of 50. Got it. Knight's Hold requires level 12 from 25. This affects all versions of the item. What item is this? Completely forgot about it. Absolutely terrible. That's the level with, I guess. Perseverance now grants 1% increased attack damage per 200 on the lowest armor and evasion rating, previously per 300. Poet's Pen improved behavior, right? Animation cancelling now works similar to Spellslinger supports. Racer of the Seventh Sun now converts 30 of fire damage from 25. Existing versions of this item can be updated. Reach of the Council, new version of this item now causes arrows fired for the first firing points to always pierce. Arrows fired from the second firing points to fork, and arrows fired from the third firing point to return. And arrows fired from the fourth firing points to chain plus 2 times. That's still terrible. That's still terrible. Red Blade Banner no longer grants 2% attack damage, leashes life against haunted enemies, now causes a war price to have infinite power. What? What? Yeah, ED is still fine, yes. What? So they balance war price and then they change one of the uniques to remove the caps? Is that what I'm getting at? Or does this just make them always hit the cap? Reverberation Roar and Amplification Roar now grants +2 level Socket the Gems for +1. Existing version of this can be updated with the Divine Orb. Now support Socket the Spell with level 10 Spell Echo from level 1, affecting all existing versions of this item. Though it may say otherwise, Amplification Roar now supports Socket Spells with level 10 Control Destruction at level 1 and level 10 Intensify instead of level 1. Increase the air effects. Likewise, this affects a version of Amplification Roar, even if the item still says it's level 1. That's actually really big. I believe infinite power will do so. Walker is always a cap. That's what I'm thinking as well, yeah. That's what I'm thinking. The changes to reverberation and amplification mode is actually pretty fucking big. Ritval's command now grants 1% damage over time multiplier. We did see both of those. I like those changes. Rolling Flames no longer grants fireball additional radius or based on distance travel. Instead now grants 30-50% chance of scorch, but prevents fireball from igniting. This doesn't affect existing versions of the jewel, however, it is now limited to 1. Sakawal's Flock now has a 100% chance to trigger level 20 Tornado when you gain Avian's Might or Avian's Flight from 25%. Savior Marriage Warriors have been renamed Marriage Saviors to differentiate them from the created General's Cry. Strike skills used by Marriage Saviors cannot hit additional targets. This affects all existing versions of the item. This change is required to maintain certain performances. Spells using the Savior with certain strike skills were causing in-depth calculation to put noticeable strain on the servers. It was accidentally missed in the development manifesto. Okay. The Scourge, new copies of this item, no longer has a chance to trigger summon Spectral Wolf from kill and causes increases reductions in melee damage also affect you at 150% of the value, which affect all versions of the items. That's very interesting. We'll see people actually using the Scourge again. Shattered Change can no longer drop. RIS, Rotten Standard. Okay. Spirited Response is now limited to 1. Now it causes you to gain 10% of damage taken as mana over 4 seconds when hit if you have Warcry recently. Split Personality is limited to 2. Star Forge is 200 to 300% down from 400 to 500. Holy. What the fuck? Gains 30% increase global physical damage is implicit by default, overriding the base type. Existing items can be ruthlessly brought back into a reasonable balance state with a Divine Orb. Scourge will stack with Spiritual Aid. Since they are different now, they do not stack, no. Troll, well, they shouldn't at least. Troll Timber Spire that causes both of you and your totems rather than just you to regenerate life per second for each summon totem from just 0.5. Ungal's Harmony now runs 250 to 350 increased global critical strike chance from 100. That's pretty big. Now critical strikes, a chance to deal extra damage per user granted 25% critical strike multi. Existing items can be updated. Pull the Toll's Embrace triggers all 20. We talked about this, and it's gonna be fucking insane to see what we can do with this. Volical Sign now grants 1% damage and leeches life against shocked enemies from 0.2 and 25% chance to shock from 10%. Delirium now grants 30 to 40 energy shield from 10 to 20, 30 to 40 fire res from 20 to 30. Voices of the Storm and Choir of Storm trigger Lightning Bolt skill now has a base critical strike chance of 7.5 up from 6. That's big. And added damage effectiveness up by 50%. Cooldown of 0.2 from 0.5. Whoa! Oh, this is actually fucking big. So people will actually bother looking at Choir of the Storm now. Voidbringer no longer increases the mana cost of skills by 40 to 80. Now grants 40 to 80 to the mana cost of skills instead. Existing items are unaffected. Wake of Destruction, new version of this item no longer causes enemies to flee. And instead leaves Shock Crowd in its wake, like the name. The last 2 seconds. It is still going to be terrible. We saw that earlier as well. Warped Timepiece now grants 10 to 15 attack damage from 8 to 12, 10 to 15 increased cast speed from 8 to 12, 10 to 15 movement speed from 12, 10 to 15 reduced skill effect duration from 8 to 12, 30% increased total recovery per second from light reach, rather than light reach and mana leech specifically. Point green is decent now, good enough for 215, but only 50% effective as blind mines. Yeah, pretty much. Whisper Guy's Ice Storm skill granted with this item now has added damage effect of 45 from 30, so they buffed it. Okay. White Wind now grants 1000 up to 1500 evasion from 300 to 400. Grants 15 to 25% chance to dodge attack hits while your off is empty from 20. Now grants 100 to 200% increased cold damage while your off is empty from 100. That's actually not bad. Actually not bad. Wildfire has been mostly redesigned. It still grants 10 to 15 fire damage, but no longer grants additional area. It now causes multi-strike to chain, projected to chain once, and causes multi-strike to fire 50% fewer projectiles. Existing enemies are unaffected. And then we have the last item, which is Wings of Entropy. Now on Esomite Axe base type, though existing enemies remain on a Sunring Axe. Now it grants a 7 to 10% chance to block spells, up from 6 to 7. 8 to 10 chance to block attacks, up from 8. And 75 to 100, up to 165 to 200 added. Fire damage for main hand attacks, and 75 to 100, up to 165 to 200 added chaos in offhand attacks. And has a 60 to 80% increased physical damage from 100 to 120. Due to the change in the base type, existing version of the item can be updated to the new values with the Divine Orb. Okay. Well, it's not that much left. Oh, shit. Which patch notes? Abyss changes. The area transition to Abyssal Depths area now becomes interactable. Well, sorry, we're here. Monster changes. Due to a number of changes making it much easier to reliably stun tough enemies, many bosses don't need to stun, will stun for a short time after the stun ends. The base distance on an enemy is knocked back by knockback effects is not based on the enemy's size. Smaller enemies are knocked further back than larger enemies. The Man Tracker monster and Hunter influence maps now spread their spit attacks out rather than all spitting at once. It's now correctly categorized as an attack and will be mitigated as such. Monsters which deal extra chaos damage, many of whom encountered in operation now say so beneath their nameplate. Other than this, does not change the balance of these monsters. You know, it's funny with this whole spit thingy, because they already made that change in the past to other things as well. And after that was introduced, packs of enemies were still simultaneously spitting on you. Abyss changes. The area transition to Abyssal Depths now are interacting more quickly after appearing. Monsters and crystals and other boss encounters elements are now destroyed when Amanu is defeated. Trail changes. Elrond's Unholy Relics and Sentinel Minis now die when Elrond is defeated. Unholy Relics summoned by Immortal Syndicate members who possess a boost bottle now disappear when that member is defeated. Brand effects created by Immortal Syndicate members will likewise disappear when the associated member is defeated. You can now quick move items between your inventory and the various material safe house benches. Oh, thank you. I actually enjoyed that one as well. Atlas and map changes. Map tiers and locations have been shuffled through the pin location for maps has not changed. Most maps are now initially found in a different tier. Unique maps have not moved or changed tiers. Improve the responsiveness of serious storms to phase transitions. Improve the layouts of the spider layer map to minimize. Wait, stop here. They fiddled with the storms in the Awakener fight. That means we're going to be spending an entire league bitching and moaning about all the bugs that will now occur in the serious fight. Through the layouts of the spider layer map to minimize backtracking, Sana can now send you on a mission to find and activate the Legion monolith. Okay. And this we've seen. User interface improvements. Oil cost for notable passive skills can now be revealed by holding down Alt while hovering over the passive. Map icons, the map stash that will now display which region they're in when hovered over. That tab list no longer closes after you select the tab. Added the ability to hide, remove only stash tabs. Quest rewards, which is a bit whatever unless you're playing for them. PvP changes. Power class mine now does 30% less damage against players. Winter type brand has an attack time override T override over 0.2 seconds. Fitness brand does 70% less damage against players. Skills tree Barkins brand does 70% less damage against players. Plus Reaper is now disabled in PvP. Who gives a shit? And then there's just a list of bug fixes which I'm not gonna bother at this point. Okay. That took a long time to go through. So, I guess my verdict on the patch notes is this. League starter builds that I can say that would be solid right now. ED Contagion, Redemption Sentry Spectres, DL Miners, Pyroclast Miners, Purifying Flame Miners, Caswatch Handling, Purifying Flame with Mueller going in for Wave of Conviction. Those would be the hands down, well, Enki's Arc Witch would be perfectly fine as well. Animate Weapon would be super solid. Herald Purity builds will be super solid. That's kind of like the 8 or 9, whatever the amount of builds I said. Like, I think if just straight off the bat, that would be fucking super solid as League starters, knowing the patch notes now. That's pretty fucking crazy. We're going to continue the stream. We'll check out the new skill tree through POB and whatnot. Since this is a clip I'll be uploading on YouTube, for anyone who tuned in and actually watched all the way till the end here, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I appreciate that a lot. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the patch notes. Because to me, my verdict is that I think that this will not at all be a melee slam build league. I think that most people will play minors, as they did for quite a few leagues now. People will start off as minors and then will branch out to play other builds afterwards. But a lot of people will play minors, specifically going for Purifying Flame or Ball Lightning. My opinion from what I can tell, and I think a lot of people will play Necromancer Spectres again because nothing's being really done to them. Even if Vicious Bite is getting hit a little bit, we don't know exact details on that. Never needed to use Vicious Bite to get insane numbers on those Spectres, so I doubt that'll be a problem. And I'm looking forward to abusing the approach of the Arcanist brand as a utility tool. So that's basically my verdict of the patch notes. We're going to be spending the coming days with updating all my build guides, and I'll be making a lot of new builds, posting a bunch of videos here on the channel with League starter suggestions, more crafting videos, and then we're going to host a build review for the community on a raffle base all the way till the League release. So till next time, boys, stay safe, keep fucking.